Let's cross live now to Al Jazeera's Bernard Smith. He joins us live now from Paris. Bernard, just give us a sense of the timeline. How did this unroll, this attack that we're learning about happening in the city of Nice?
More details coming in at the moment, Hala, but it happened now at about 9 o'clock or just before 9 o'clock local time. That's just over 2 hours ago. And we understand mainly from what the mayor of Nice is saying, Christian Estrosi. He says that it seems the attackers got into the church and attacked people in the church. We now know at least 3 people have been killed. One of the victims, a woman, the mayor says, was beheaded, and the mayor says that it seems that one of those who was killed was the church warden. More details still coming through. The attacker was reasonably quickly after these attacks, was detained by the police. It seems he was shot and injured. He's alive. He's being treated in hospital for his injuries. And the mayor, Christian Estrosi, he says that the attacker kept shouting Allahu Akbar even whilst he was being detained by the police. So that's the latest details we have at the moment. And also we're told that President Emmanuel Macron is heading down to Nice, Hala.
Bernard, just give us a sense of how the situation is, because this is not the first attack that France has seen in recent days, is it not? This does follow that attack in the north of the country where a teacher was beheaded, and that led to a significant number of protests, did it not?
Yes, this attack follows the murder of teacher Samuel Paty. He was killed as he walked home from school in a Paris suburb. And it's understood that Mr. Paty was targeted because he'd given a class on secularism to students at his school. He was a widely regarded and respected teacher. And in this class on secularism, teaching children about the right to free speech, he'd shown cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, cartoons that many Muslims find offensive. This angered Muslim parents. It sparked a lot of anger on social media. This got through to this 18-year-old Chechen who was a permanent resident here in France, and he travelled some 50 kilometres from where he lived in the days that followed the outrage, the complaints over Samuel Paty's class, and he murdered Samuel Paty, beheaded him on the street as he walked home from school. That, of course, a very shocking and brutal murder, shocked France, where teachers are sort of highly regarded and respected in many ways. It shocked France, and it came off the back of the president of France explaining how he wanted to crack down, if you will, on what he saw as extreme Islamic conservatism. He'd already been talking about this. And in the wake of the murder of Samuel Paty, there was a broader crackdown on, there were some arrests on people who'd been on terror watch lists in France. A mosque in the Paris suburbs was closed for 6 months because the imam at the mosque had put on Facebook, on social media, this video of a parent complaining about Samuel Paty. And the consequence of that, particularly, for example, the closure of the mosque, was that, of course, the vast majority of Muslims in France are not involved in any way, are not interested in any at all in this sort of extremist activity. But there were complaints that everybody was being blamed for the behaviour of one individual. When this mosque was closed, there are 1,000 people that go to that mosque, and they're saying, why are we all being punished because somebody here published a video? So that's the tension that has been created over in the last weeks.
Well, it's certainly, and that's just in the last week, Bernard, but this does seem to be a recurring theme. In fact, it has been for many years now in France, we have seen these tensions between extremists, and then that brings the focus onto the Muslim community on the whole. And this stretches back, of course, to those attacks in the Bataclan on Charlie Hebdo. Just tell us more about this inherent tension that we have between France and its Muslim population.
Well, as I say, I'm not sure the vast majority of France's Muslim population would all feel at tension with the state. But the problem that the challenge that France has had is that at a government level, it holds very dear its principles of secularism that divides the church from the state. And this was introduced to get rid of the influence of the Catholic church at the beginning of the last century, and this is why France introduced this division of church and state. In more recent years, the challenge France has had, like other European countries, is to integrate into its society an immigrant population, and France's immigrant population is mainly Muslim, coming from former French colonies. And everybody who goes to a French school is taught about the values of republicanism, and secularism. And the French model of laïcité is that you are expected to accept the French system, no questions. This is how it is in France, and you are expected to accept that way of living, slightly different from the more multicultural approach that you might have in the United Kingdom, for example. So the strain has always been in this way France imposes its secularism and how some corners of France's Muslim community feel under fire because they don't, because of the religion they follow.
OK. Bernard, we're going to stay with this for just a moment, just for any viewers who are joining us here on Al Jazeera. A quick reminder of that breaking news coming out of Nice in the south of France. French prosecutors are saying that a terror investigation has been opened into this Nice attack. The mayor has said that the person suspected of carrying out that knife attack is currently in hospital, and we understand that 3 people have been killed in that knife attack in the city of Nice. Bernard Smith is in Paris for us. He's keeping across all of the detail for us. Bernard, you mentioned earlier that the French President, Emmanuel Macron, will be heading down to Nice. This is certainly a terrible time for France, because not only are they dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, but now we have this, what appears to be and what the authorities are investigating as a terrorist incident there. What can we expect to see from the government in the coming few hours, Bernard?
Well, we've had a minute's silence in the French National Assembly earlier today. It was meeting, as it happens, to discuss the new COVID lockdown that begins essentially tomorrow in France, begins on Friday in France. So already the nation preparing itself for that as a second wave hits France, as it's hitting the rest of Europe, and it's hitting it strongly, and there's a lot of people in hospital and increasing numbers of hospital admissions, forcing the French president to go make an address to the nation last night explaining why this second lockdown, slightly modified from the version in spring, was being put into place. So already there was that issue. There have been in the last couple of weeks tensions between France and other Muslim majority countries, particularly with Turkey now, and other countries calling for a boycott of French products and French companies because of Emmanuel Macron's crackdown on elements of France's Muslim society following the murder of Samuel Paty. So those tensions were there already. Tensions at an international level, as I say, with some Muslim majority countries. In France itself, it was, I would say, after the murder of Samuel Paty, there was more shock and anger than tension. But now, with what's happened in Nice this morning, I can imagine there will be increased tension. Having said that, of course, because of COVID, most people will be having to stay home anyway. So most of the country confined to their homes, only essential travel for shopping and exercise. And if you have to go to work, you're allowed outside your home.
OK, Bernard, stay with us for just a moment. You mentioned there that minute's silence being called in the National Assembly. Well, the president of the National Assembly has addressed members of Parliament, calling on them to observe a minute of silence for the victims and for their families.